What exactly is video game addiction? To put it simply, video game addiction is the inability to stop playing video games even when it is negatively impacting various aspects of your life. Personally, I experienced video game addiction for pretty much most of my childhood and adult life. It started out as simple browser games that I would do in my free time. It eventually graduated to MMORPGs as I got later into elementary school. I started getting into first-person shooters once I got to middle school. And eventually, I was spending so much time playing video games that I had little to no free time for homework, for my friends, for my chores at home, or really anything else. It took up almost all of the space in my mind, and that's all that I wanted to do. And because I spent so much time playing video games, I was unable to develop the social skills necessary to happily navigate high school and middle school. And it also became a coping mechanism for me to deal with stress or emotional issues. I would just escape into the video games. And during my first relationship, this is a very clear example of video game addiction, is I noticed that I was not really present with my partner. All that I really wanted to do was play video games. Obviously, I enjoyed spending time with them. I wanted them to be around. But whenever I had the urge to play video games, I would just sit down, I would play them, and I would basically just ignore them. And after a while, they just got really tired of me, taking them for granted, not really appreciating them. And I didn't realize how much I valued the relationship until they said, look, it's time that we parted ways. This is not working. And it hit me really hard. And of course, I just fell really deep into video games. It was a nice way of coping for me, but it didn't really solve the core problem. And that's when I first tried to quit video games, all the way back in 2016. I only lasted about, 6 months or so before all of my friends were just like, dude, this is stupid. Why are you not playing video games? You're missing all these great experiences with us. This is so lame. This is dumb. Like, it's pointless. And they didn't understand that video games were having a negative impact on their life the way that I did. And yet, despite that understanding, I just fell back into it because it was familiar, it was socially acceptable, and that's what I knew that I could do. Another aspect of video game addiction that I touched on a little bit in my story is that you're addicted to video games when all that you can think about, or at least the vast majority of your thoughts, consist of the games that you are playing. You are brainstorming ways of accomplishing new achievements in the video game. You're coming up with strategies for how you can win games and matches in your favorite competitive shooter or your favorite MMORPG. You want to get better at PvP. You want to increase your stats. All of these random things that seem so important and so fulfilling and satisfying while you're playing the games, that when you actually look at it, they mean nothing. It's a lot of times people will make the comparison. It's like, well, video games are just like a sport, and then I would say they're not. If you just from the outside looking in, if you look at someone who is playing video games, they're staring at a screen for hours on end, moving their thumbs in just these random formations, or they're pressing buttons on a keyboard, moving their mouse, and that's it. They're just vegging out in front of a screen. Someone who's playing actual sports is out there in the field, in the elements. They are exerting themselves. They are experiencing pain, actual pain and discomfort. They have to have courage. They have to have discipline. They have to have real hand-eye coordination, not the hand-eye coordination that you get from supposedly playing video games. So there's a world of difference between so-called esports and actual sports. And so that really aggravates me when people make that comparison, because the amount of downstream benefits that come from playing video games is little to none when compared to actual physical sports. Another aspect of video game addiction is that you start to procrastinate by gaming. And basically what that looks like is that you're faced with responsibilities and you need to do your chores, or you need to do your homework, or you need to, go take the dog for a walk, or whatever it might be, stack firewood. Rather than doing these things, you deliberately choose to go play video games and put it off until the absolute last minute when you can go and address the actual thing that you needed to do in the first place. It is not always a pleasant experience because you know you need to do that thing, and yet you are putting it off, building up all of this internal discomfort. It just results in you wasting a lot of time and developing the really bad habit of not tackling your responsibilities head on, which leads me into one of the other aspects of video game addiction. The last one that I will touch on in this short video is that you definitely are addicted if you are squeezing in video games into every single moment that you possibly can throughout your day. For example, throughout high school and even after I graduated, I would basically wake up early to play video games. I would wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, way before I needed to, so that I could hop on my computer or hop on my Xbox, log into the game that I was playing at the time, get half an hour in, an hour in, just so that I would get that fix. And then when I was at school or at work, I would be watching videos of people playing video games on my phone. And then literally the second that I got off the bus or I got home out of my car from school, I would just sit down and I would play video games. Obviously, I had a social life. I had other things going on. Like if I was spending time with my friends, I would be going and doing that. Of course, a lot of my friends, they also played video games. And so one of my closest friends, ones that I just spent a lot of time with, our time spent together pretty much consisted of me literally taking my Xbox from my house, bringing it to his house, setting it up with a monitor right next to him in his own room while he had his Xbox and his TV, and we would both play separate games next to each other. Sometimes we would play together on the same game doing co-op, but that's literally what we would do. It was like an opium den for video games. From the moment I would step foot into his room until the next morning, we were just playing video games. We would stay up until 3, 4, 5 in the morning just playing video games until we passed out. And then as soon as we woke up, play video games. If that's not an addiction, I don't know what is. Video game addiction is real. It is unfortunately socially acceptable. And so a lot of people don't realize the actual negative impacts that it has. And when they try to bring it up, everyone around them in their circle brushes it off as like, oh, you're being dramatic, you're overreacting, it's not a big deal, it's just a game, like what harm could it do? And meanwhile, it is totally destroying our generation in so many different ways. And I will touch on those in future videos. But for now, this has been an exploration of what exactly video game addiction is, and I hope to see you in the next video.